The dispatcher's voice cracked through the radio, thin and frantic. "Repeat, 15L. 30, are you seeing this?" The signal at Western just went out again. I keyed the mic, my thumb sticking to the plastic. The air in the van was thick enough to chew, a stale soup of vinyl and my own sweat. Behind me, separated by a steel mesh cage, my prisoner sat in perfect stillness. His name was Zeke Pedy, and the weight of his capture was a cool stone in my gut, the first real peace I'd felt in a decade. I looked at him in the rearview mirror, his sharp face unreadable, his eyes just watching the world burn outside the barred window. The city was choking under a record heat wave, and a solar flare had been cooking the grid for 2 days, causing rolling brownouts that made everyone meaner. The smell of hot asphalt baked through the floorboards. I remembered the raid 10 years ago. The smell then was different. It was cordite, and the coppery tang of blood in the air. Jeffries went through the door first because I was still checking the warrant language, dotting an I that didn't need dotting. He took a knife to the throat while I was following the book. I saw the glint of the blade and his surprised face, and that memory was welded behind my eyes. It was the reason I took the I-10 freeway today instead of the faster surface streets. The book said to take the most direct, secure route for prisoner transport, and the book was all I had left. Zeke Pedy was the validation of that book. The physical evidence in the Sharma murder was a fortress, every piece collected and processed with zero shortcuts. His arrest was the final brick in that wall. So we sat, crawling along in traffic that had stopped moving entirely. Horns blared in a useless, angry chorus. I cursed the delay under my breath, my starched collar now a wet rag around my neck. The police radio sputtered again, no longer the calm drone of official business, but a panicked scramble of voices overlapping. One voice cut through the noise, a rookie patrolman by the sound of him, his pitch rising into a scream. "They're not rioting, my God, they're eating him." A wet, tearing sound followed, and then his transmission ended in a burst of static. The world outside my windshield had gone insane. A man in a business suit walked away from his stalled Lexus, stumbled on the white line, and then launched himself at a woman trying to get her child out of a car seat. He bit into her neck like an animal. More people were getting out of their cars, their movements jerky and wrong. Some were attacking others, while some just stared at the sky with bleeding eyes. This was not a riot. This was a plague. I slammed the van into reverse, the transmission groaning in protest. I had to get us off this elevated slab of concrete. I cranked the wheel, trying to angle toward an emergency access ramp I knew was a quarter-mile back. A woman with blood pouring from her eyes and mouth ran directly into my path. I swerved hard to avoid her, the heavy van fishtailing. The world became a screech of tortured metal as we slammed sideways into the central concrete divider. My head hit the steering wheel, and for a second the only thing I could see were bright, swimming lights. The engine died with a final shuddering cough. The radio was silent. We were trapped. Through the mesh, I could see Zeke was still calm, his expression unchanged. The sounds from outside were worse now, a symphony of screams, breaking glass, and wet guttural noises. They were swarming the stationary cars, pulling people out. The sounds mixed with the memory of my partner's last breath, a ragged, wet gurgle on a dirty apartment floor. I was in a cage again, just a different kind. A bloody face slammed against the barred passenger window, inches from Zeke. Its eyes were milky white, and it clawed at the glass, leaving streaks of red. Then another appeared beside it. And another. "This is a V-Series cage from Panoptic Security." Zeke's voice was quiet, analytical, cutting through my paralysis. "Their engineers are lazy. They always put the manual release behind the weakest rivet on the mounting plate. Pass me your belt." I stared at him. He wanted me to give him my belt, a potential weapon, a tool for escape. The suspect never gets uncuffed. The suspect never leaves the cage until he's in a cell. Those were the rules. "I'll get you out of the cage," he continued, his eyes fixed on mine in the mirror. "You get me out of these cuffs. That's the deal." No deal. A stalemate settled in the suffocating heat. Every second we waited, the scraping and pounding on the van grew louder, more frantic. From a minivan 20 feet away, A child's scream rose above the chaos. It was high and pure and full of terror. The scream went on and on, then it stopped. The silence that followed was more horrible than the noise. A moment later, I heard the distinct sound of wet chewing. The memory broke over me in a wave. Jeffries on the floor, his hand clutching mine, his eyes pleading with me to do something, anything, while he bled out. I had followed procedure instead of my gut, and he had died for it. My rules were a suicide pact. They always had been. I took off my belt and passed it through the mesh to Zeke without another word. He took the buckle and went to work on a specific spot on the cage's mounting plate, pushing and twisting with focused effort. A minute later, there was a loud pop, and the cage door swung open an inch. He had told the truth. He pushed it open and stepped into the front of the van, the chain between his manacled hands jingling softly. He looked at the mangled passenger door, then pointed to the rear doors. "That's our way out." The impact buckled the frame near the lower hinge. "It's a weak point now." I grabbed the heavy crowbar from my gear bag wedged under the seat. Together we moved to the back. He showed me exactly where to wedge the tip of the bar. I put my entire weight into it, my muscles screaming in the heat. The metal groaned. We worked together, him guiding the bar, me providing the force. With a final, ear-splitting shriek of metal, the door bent open just enough for a person to squeeze through. We spilled out onto the freeway, a junkyard of wrecked cars and mangled bodies. The cuffs on Zeke's wrists were still connected to the leg irons on his ankles by a short, thick chain, and I had cuffed his other wrist to my own. We were tethered, a clumsy, two-headed animal in a slaughterhouse. We stood between a smashed sedan and an overturned pickup truck. A body lay on the asphalt not 10 feet away, a woman in a yellow dress. As we watched, she groaned, and her head snapped in our direction as she lurched to her feet. The crowbar was on the floor of the van, just out of reach. The chain connecting my wrist to his caught on the twisted metal of a car door, and the sudden jerk sent us both sprawling onto the hot asphalt. My prisoner landed hard, his wiry frame absorbing the impact, while my own heavy body hit the ground with a force that knocked the wind from my lungs. For a moment I just lay there, the sun beating down on my back through my ruined suit jacket, watching the shimmering heat rise from the pavement. Every stalled car was an oven, every shadow a mirage, and the only water we had left was a single warm bottle sloshing in my pocket. Zeke Pedy got to his feet first, his movements economical, and he looked back at me with those constantly scanning eyes. He didn't offer a hand, he just waited, the cuff on his wrist, the steel reminder of my authority. It was an authority that felt thinner than my sweat-soaked shirt. "This isn't working," he said, his voice a dry rasp. I pushed myself up, my knee screaming from the impact, and yanked the chain free from the wreckage. We were clumsy, a three-legged animal in a graveyard of steel, and it had almost gotten us killed. 10 minutes earlier, one of the infected, a synaptic, had sprinted towards us with impossible speed, and we had barely scrambled over a concrete divider in time, the chain clattering behind us like an alarm bell. "I see a house," Zeke said, pointing past the sea of cars towards a row of suburban rooftops barely visible through the haze. 2 stories, tan stucco. It has solar panels on the roof. I followed his gaze, my eyes gritty from a lack of sleep. He was right. Solar panels meant a chance at power, which could mean an electric well pump and water. Real, life-saving water. "We can't get there like this," he continued, his tone flat and analytical. "We need to move faster and quieter." I looked down at the cuffs that bound us, then at him. My whole world, my entire belief system, was forged in the fire that killed my partner Jeffries. The process provides the truth. No shortcuts. But the process was a 12-inch steel chain getting snagged on a broken door, and the truth was we were dying of thirst. I made a new calculation. It felt like a betrayal. It felt necessary. I unlocked the cuff from his wrist. He rubbed the raw skin but didn't move away. He just watched me. "Take off your boots," I ordered. He looked down at his durable military-grade boots, then at my own scuffed and worn-out dress shoes. He understood immediately. He didn't argue or protest. He just sat on the bumper of a dusty sedan, unlaced them, and slid them off. I handed him my shoes, which were loose on his feet. He handed me his boots, which fit perfectly. The power had shifted. He was physically free, but I held his ability to run, to survive in this broken world. We moved through the maze of stalled cars. Zeke a few feet ahead of me, his steps awkward in my flimsy shoes. The suburb was quieter than the freeway, an unnatural silence that settled over manicured lawns now turning brown under the oppressive sun. The Target house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac. Its front door was slightly ajar. We approached slowly, my gun in my hand, the weight of Zeke's boots on my feet. A strange comfort. As we got closer, a single, soft sound reached us from deep within the silent, darkened house, a child's voice, carrying a simple tune without words. Inside, the man of the house was infected, a stage 1 irritable who didn't attack, but just stood in the dim hallway, staring at us with confused, paranoid eyes. The child's tune was coming from a battery-powered toy in an upstairs bedroom. I tried to talk to him, tried to use the de-escalation training that was drilled into me for 25 years. I told him we were police, that we just needed water. But my voice echoed in the stale air. Zeke moved past me with a fluid motion. He had picked up a heavy glass paperweight from a desk in the entryway. He didn't hesitate. The sound of the impact was dull and final. The man dropped without a sound. Zeke looked at me, his expression unreadable. That was a mercy-killing detective. He had hours left at most. I didn't say anything. I just watched him walk to the kitchen and start looking for the well pump controls. We secured the house, finding it empty except for the dead homeowner. The solar array was working, and soon we had cold water pouring from the tap. After we had both drunk until we were sick, Zeke pointed me towards his apartment, a small complex less than a mile away. He told me exactly where to look, a false panel in the back of his closet, and what to get. The raid was high risk, a quick trip through streets that were growing more dangerous by the hour, but we made it back with a small, fireproof pouch. Zeke took the pouch and opened it on the kitchen table, the laptop we'd found plugged into a wall outlet and glowing with life. "The woman I'm accused of killing, Dr. Sharma," he began, his voice low. "She wasn't just a client. She was my mentor from a military bio-research unit I consulted for years ago." He pushed the contents of the pouch towards me. It was a single data key, cracked down the middle but still seemingly intact. "She hired me off the books because she was scared. She thought her corporate backers were going to steal her work. The work on the virus. I was in her lab that night, doing a covert security sweep, when they came. A professional team." He tapped the key. "She gave me this just before they breached the door. She told me to run. This is proof. They killed her and planted my prints." The pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. This wasn't a murder case anymore. The people who framed him were the same people who had just ended the world. "They aren't just cleaning up a murder, Mace," he said, using my old nickname for the first time. "They're cleaning up their mess. And they're still out there." As the words left his mouth, I looked out the kitchen window towards the street. 2 blocks down, I saw a figure in full tactical gear raise a rifle. The movement was calm, practiced. He fired once, the sound silenced by a suppressor, and a running survivor a few feet from him crumpled to the ground. The soldier didn't even break stride. He was just cleaning. Zeke worked on the damaged key for hours, managing to pull fragments from the encrypted files. It wasn't a manifest or a blueprint, just bits of communication logs. He found a call sign, Remnant 0, and a set of GPS coordinates pointing to a private airfield out in the desert. "My bunker is in Anza Borrego," he said, looking up from the screen. "It's in the same direction. Our only chance is to get there, but we can check out this drop point on the way, see who we're dealing with. A new mission, not justice, not survival, but reconnaissance. A hunt." As we packed the last of the water bottles and canned food from the house's pantry, I saw them. 2 men in the same clean, functional tactical gear, moving down the street with rifles at the ready. They were sweeping the neighborhood, house by house, killing every infected and survivor they found. They were methodical. They were searching. We slipped out the back door, our hearts pounding, and hid behind a large dumpster in the alley. We were close enough to hear the radio on the lead soldier's vest crackle to life. The voice was clear and professional. No sign of target Pedy. Expand the search grid. He has the Sharma key. He is priority 1. Getting out of the city was a nightmare of detours and close calls. On a commercial street choked with debris, a woman flagged us down from behind a barricade of office furniture piled in the doorway of a small clinic. She was a doctor, her face lined with exhaustion, and she was keeping a dozen people alive inside. Her problem was simple and deadly. She was out of insulin, and her diabetics would soon go into shock. There was a pharmacy across the street, but another group of survivors had fortified it and wouldn't share. My instincts took over. This was a situation I understood. A barricaded suspect, a hostage negotiation. This was police work. I started laying out a plan, talking about containment and non-lethal entry, about flanking and distraction. I was going to be a cop again. Zeke grabbed my arm. "Mace, this is a bad idea. We can't afford this. We are the mission." "There are people in there who need help," I snapped back, pulling my arm away. "You talk to them, you make noise, you draw every one of those things for a mile," he warned, his voice urgent. "The only way this works is fast and violent. You go in, you take what you need, and you get out. Anything else is suicide." I ignored him. I walked out from behind our cover and cupped my hands around my mouth, shouting towards the pharmacy. I tried to reason with them, to negotiate a trade. I wasted time. Precious, irreplaceable time. The response from the pharmacy was a single gunshot that chipped the concrete near my head. The response from the city was the sound of running feet, dozens of them. A horde of synaptics, drawn by my shouting, poured into the street from the intersecting alleys. They swarmed the clinic's weak barricade, tearing it apart in seconds. The screams from inside were short. We barely made it out alive, sprinting away as the clinic was overrun. I fell to my knees a block away, gasping for air, covered in the blood of a biter I had to kill at close range. I watched the clinic burn against the evening sky, the smoke black and thick. My plan, my rules, my code had just gotten all those people slaughtered. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Zeke walked up and stood beside me. He didn't say "I told you so." He just held out a pistol, offering it to me grip first. "The old world is dead, detective," he said quietly. "Are you?" I took the pistol from his hand and checked the magazine without looking at him. The answer was in the cold, efficient click of the slide as I chambered around. Deceased Pepe was a body I had left to burn with the others at the clinic. Now, there was only the mission. We drove out of the city in a stolen pickup, the world behind us a smear of black smoke against the bruised sky. The farther we went, the more the land opened up. A silent expanse of cracked earth and baked rock that cared nothing for what we had lost. I had spent my life trying to build a wall of rules to hold back the chaos, but that wall was gone. There was only the hunt. Zeke navigated from a worn paper map while I drove, my hands steady on the wheel. I was thin now, the weight of my old life burned away by hunger and the relentless sun, and the world looked sharper, clearer. The airfield was just a scar on the desert floor. We left the truck in a dry wash a mile out and watched through binoculars. A single Humvee was parked near a pile of open supply crates. 2 men in full tactical gear were loading the last of the boxes. They moved with the easy confidence of predators who believed they had no enemies. "You know how to fight them," Zeke said, his voice a low rasp beside me. "I know how to disappear. We need both." We were no longer running. We followed the Humvee on foot, keeping to the low ground. When it stopped near a cluster of rocks, 1 man got out. Zeke was gone before I could blink, a shadow slipping through other shadows. I waited, my heart a slow, steady drum. I felt a cold calm I hadn't known in years, not since the botched raid that took Jeffries. This time, there would be no shortcuts, only a clean, direct line of action. I heard a single muffled grunt from the rocks. Zeke reappeared a moment later, holding a small, encrypted radio. He nodded once. The driver called out a name, his voice impatient. When he got no answer, he opened his door and stepped out, his rifle held loosely at his side. I was on him before he could raise it. The years of police takedowns, the muscle memory of controlling a struggling body, came back to me not as a tool of arrest, but as pure, brutal physics. I put him down hard and quiet in the dirt. Zeke worked on the captured radio while I gathered water and ammunition from their bodies. He bypassed the local encryption, his scarred fingers moving with practiced speed. He found what we were looking for in the network chatter, a denied request for a medical evacuation. A wounded soldier left behind at the airfield because he was a liability. He was our way in. We found him leaning against a stack of crates, his leg wrapped in a crude, blood-soaked bandage. He was young, his face pale with shock. He looked up as I stood over him, his eyes wide with fear. The detective in me, the man who would have offered aid and comfort, was gone. I knelt beside him and pressed my thumb into the wound. He screamed, a raw, thin sound that the wind tore away. "Tell me where your command center is," I said, my voice flat. He shook his head, spitting curses. I pushed harder, the pressure making his whole body arch. "The next thing I do is take a piece of you," I told him, my voice low and even. "And then another. I will keep doing it until you tell me everything, or until there is nothing left of you to ask." His defiance shattered under the weight of the pain. He gave me the location through gritted teeth and broken sobs. A decommissioned NORAD bunker built into a mountain not far from here. When he was done, I stood up and walked away. I didn't look back. Zeke met my eyes, and he saw the final change. There were no cops left, only killers and the dead. The bunker entrance was a massive steel blast door set into a sheer rock face, nearly invisible against the gray stone. Cameras and sensors guarded it, a web of automated death. Zeke pulled a small tablet from his pack and knelt beside a junction box disguised as a rock. "Amateurs," he muttered, his fingers flying across the screen. "They're using a standard military security protocol. They never imagined someone would be coming for them from the outside." A series of small lights on a panel by the door flickered and went dark. A smaller maintenance hatch beside the main door slid open with a low groan. We slipped into the cool, dark interior. The air tasted of filtered air and ozone. We moved through the concrete corridors like one entity. Zeke would point to a security camera, and I would put a silenced round through its lens. He would disable an electronic lock with a handheld device, and I would breach the door, weapon ready. We were a ghost in their machine, moving deeper into its heart. The command center was a large circular room with walls of dark computer screens. 3 men stood inside, their leader in the center, looking at a tactical map. He was fit, with short gray hair and a clean black uniform. He turned as we entered, a small, knowing smile on his face. He didn't seem surprised. "Detective Zeke Pedy," he said, his voice calm, "and Zeke Pedy. The last loose ends. I have to admit, I'm impressed." "It's over," I said, my pistol aimed at his chest. He chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Over? It's just beginning." He gestured to the screens. "We didn't destroy the world, Detective. We cleansed it. We hit the reset button on a failed experiment. This plague was the flood, and we are Noah's Ark. We will rebuild, and this time it will be done right." He walked to a reinforced container in the corner and keyed in a code. The lid hissed open, revealing a rack of vials bathed in a cold blue light. "Of course," he continued, "every new world needs a god, and a god needs the power of life and death." He lifted one of the vials, holding it up. "A fully viable, 100% effective vaccine. 50 doses. Enough to choose who gets to be a part of the future." He set the vial down and walked to a control panel on the far wall. He looked me right in the eye, his smile widening, and slammed his palm down on a large red button. Klaxons began to blare. Red emergency lights pulsed through the room, washing everything in a bloody glow. An automated voice echoed from the ceiling. "Self-destruct sequence initiated. 10 minutes to detonation." The leader cracked his knuckles, the sound sharp in the sudden chaos. 10 minutes, he said. You can have the future if you can take it from me. He didn't move towards me. He lunged at Zeke, a long combat knife appearing in his hand, and drove it hard toward Zeke's gut.